Have you ever wanted to look at your party tank and call them squishy? In this video, we're going to take tanking to the extreme and make a D&D character that's almost invincible, a walking fortress. I don't know about you, but I love playing tanks. There's just something magical about walking into a battle knowing that you'll be the last one standing. This build takes that to the next level. It can get up to 30 AC and a lowest saving throw of +10 with no magic items, so just imagine what it can do with some extra bonuses. When we're set up for the battle, an adult red dragon will need to roll a 16 to hit our walking fortress, and will do a puny 27 damage on its breath attack, if it rolls max damage. You might be wondering how we can possibly create such an epitome of tankiness. Let's find out. First up, our priorities. So we can fear no blow and we can tank for days, we're going to prioritise high armour class so we rarely get hit by attacks, high saves so we don't get incapacitated and mitigate damage from area attacks, damage resistances and immunities so we can weather any storm, and area denial and taunt effects. Our focus on this build is primarily on our tankiness. We are going to prioritise that over our damage output, but the damage output remains pretty decent for the build anyway. As AC is our top priority, we need to maximise that first. That means we'll need to use heavy armour and shields and have proficiencies in both, and also we'll need 15 strength so we can use plate armour. Both light and medium armour cap at 17 armour class, and while you can get higher than this with no armour with a barbarian or monk, that would mean that you lose out on potential armour class bonuses from using magical or infused armour or shields. We're going to go for every last point of armour class we can get, so heavy armour and a shield it is. A level of fighter will give us all the proficiencies we're looking for, so that goes on our wish list. We'll round out the typical high AC build by taking the defense fighting style for an extra 1 to armour class. Plate armour and a shield with the defense fighting style will give us a nice 21 base armour class, but that's pretty standard stuff and we can do much better. Here's where we get to one of the most important parts of the build. We're going to take the War Magic subclass for the Wizard. This adds 13 intelligence as a requirement and gives us a few really important things. First up, we get access to the shield spell, so we can increase our armour class by 5 until our next round as a reaction, not to mention loads of other spells that can help us with our defences, such as absorb elements, but we'll talk about those later. When we first pick up the subclass at level 2 Wizard, we get the Arcane Deflection feature. This lets us spend our reaction to increase our AC by 2 if we're going to get hit, or our saving throw by 4 if we're going to fail it, at the expense of not being able to cast spells other than cantrips on our next turn. While the armour class bonus part of this is decent, the saving throw bonus is excellent. And this will help us make our weaker saves, you know, the ones where we only have a +6 or 7 bonus. As we'll see later, not being able to cast spells other than cantrips on our turn isn't going to be much of a detriment to us either. Where the War Magic Wizard really shines though, and what will make our build come together, is the durable magic feature that we get at level 10 Wizard. This will give us a +2 bonus to armour class and all saving throws while we're concentrating on a spell. That's a great bonus, so let's make sure we keep it. If we take our first level in Fighter, then we already get proficiency in Constitution saving throws. But let's get advantage in concentration checks too by picking up the Warcaster feat. Aside from the advantage, this gives us some extra benefits too, such as letting us cast spells while we have a weapon and shield in hand, and letting us cast a spell instead of making an opportunity attack. It's worth noting that the Arcane Deflection and Durable Magic features work really well together, because we can use the +4 to saves from Arcane Deflection to pass a concentration check that we would fail otherwise, and keep Durable Magic up. If we're going to take 10 levels in Wizard, then we might as well turn it up to 11 so we can get level 6 spells, including Fizzband's Platinum Shield, which is excellent for our build. We'll see why later. Our next priority is saving throws. We'll get a nice semi-permanent +2 bonus from Durable Magic so long as we're concentrating on a spell, but we can do much better. The Paladin is the indisputable GOAT of saving throws with their Aura of Protection feature, so let's add that to our wish list, along with 20 Charisma so we can max out the bonus with a huge +5 to all saving throws. With Aura of Protection and the bonus from Durable Magic, we'll have a massive +7 bonus to all saving throws. 6 levels of Paladin will also give us some extra goodies, including Lay on Hand so we can stick around for longer, and both Divine Smite and extra attack so we can bring the Pain Train. That's 2 of our priorities sorted. The next one is damage resistances and immunities, so we can mitigate damage. As this is third on our list of priorities and we don't have room for it in the build, we won't be taking Bear Totem Barbarian, but we do get access to some great wizard spells that help out here. This includes Blade Ward, Absorb Elements, Protection from Elements, Intellect Fortress, and Fizzban's Platinum Shield. We can also use Shield for immunity to magic missile, and Counterspell to generally be a nuisance and deny damage in the first place. Now coming to our final priority, we want to hold the front lines and taunt our enemies. The most important thing that matches our wish list and helps us do this is the Booming Blade cantrip, which threatens enemies from running away from us with a nice dose of thunder damage. The Paladin spell Compel Duel is an option here, but we'll generally have better things to do with our concentration. A more obscure option that can help is to take level 3 Cavalier Fighter for the Unwavering Mark feature. This means that when we hit an adjacent enemy with a melee weapon attack, we can mark them so they get disadvantage on attacking our allies so long as they remain within 5 feet of us. This works with opportunity attacks that we make, and with Booming Blade too. Damned if they do, damned if they don't. If we hit an enemy and they want to attack anyone other than us, they can either choose to run away and take the thunder damage, or stay put and get disadvantage on their attacks. We'll be able to use this to help protect our fellow frontline characters. You know, the ones that don't have 30 armor class. This feature lets us mark any number of enemies and lasts until the end of our next turn. So if there are multiple enemies within 5 feet of us, we can split our attacks to spread more disadvantage. Okay, so now we've got all the pieces, let's put the build together. We start with a level of fighter. This gives us all the proficiencies we'll need, including proficiency with constitution saves, a bunch of hit points, the defense fighting style, and second wind for some healing. Let's assume that we're using point buy and Tasha's rules and talk about race later. We need to start with 15 strength, 13 intelligence and 16 charisma because we'll only get 3 ability score improvements, and we're going to use 1 to get the Warcaster feat. We also want 10 dexterity so we don't lose any armor class. We apply a +2 racial bonus to our highest stat, charisma, and our +1 bonus to our second highest, strength. That's most of our stats. We leave wisdom at 8, take our con up to 12, and that leaves us with 2 options for our remaining points. We can either have 16 strength or 14 intelligence. We aren't going to need to prepare many spells, and we won't be using spells with saving throws in this build, so let's pump strength to 16. With 16 charisma and no use for it, we're going to have to cope with a relatively suboptimal stat allocation for a while, and we'll have a relatively low con, but by level 2 we'll be more durable than most dedicated tanks, and Arcane Deflection will help us make our concentration checks. When choosing our race, we want anything that gives us more durability. I like the Earth Genasi for this build because it gives us the Blade Ward cantrip, but more importantly it lets us cast it using a bonus action a number of times per day equal to our proficiency bonus. This is a really strong option for the build because we hope to be attracting as many attacks as possible, and even with our ridiculously high armor class, some attacks will inevitably get through. Resistance against damage from physical weapon attacks is a great tool to have in our toolbox, and even better if we can get it using a bonus action. The Earth Genasi gets Dark Vision too, which is always something to look out for. For background, anything goes. When I played this build using my character Thunderstone, I took Folk Hero because it fit the idea of a guy that likes to take hits for others well. If you can find a background that helps the build, please let me know in the comments. We want to get our AC to ridiculous proportions as soon as possible, so we next take 4 levels of Wizard, choosing the War Magic subclass. We want the first level for access to Shield and Absorb Elements, and the second for Arcane Deflection and that nice +2 to armor class or +4 to saving throws. The +2 to armor class is like a mini shield that only works for 1 attack and doesn't cost a spell slot, but we'll mostly be using this for the bonus to saves when we need it. For cantrips we take Blade Ward if we don't already have it, Booming Blade, and Shocking Touch. Do what you like with your other spell picks, but it's always good to take ritual spells because wizards can cast spells with the ritual tag if they're in the spellbook without preparing them. At level 2 wizard we could switch to Paladin, but level 3 wizard gives us Blur, which makes us that much more durable, and then level 4 will give us Warcaster. This will mean we don't need to worry about spell components, it'll help us keep Blur up, and it'll let us use Booming Blade in place of an opportunity attack. If we need to worry about spell components, then we use Shocking Touch as our main attack until we get to level 5 and take Warcaster. If we don't have to worry about spell components, then we can equip our one-handed melee weapon of choice and use Booming Blade instead. Either way, from level 5 we'll be using Booming Blade as our main attack until we get the extra attack feature. A level 5, assuming that we took 16 strength, and our accuracy and damage output is almost on par with a level 5 fighter. While we only get to make a single attack, Booming Blade adds an extra D8 thunder damage on the main hit at this level. Our durability, however, far exceeds that of most tanks in heavy armour. Blur gives enemies disadvantage on attacks against us, and we can use the shield spell to get to 26 AC if 21 isn't enough. At level 5, our build is now firmly in place, and we get to decide which aspect of being the ultimate tank we want to explore next. We can either keep taking wizard levels to get some nice concentration spells, Counterspell and durable magic earlier, or start taking Paladin levels for higher hit points, more damage potential with Divine Smite and extra attack, and a bigger bonus to all saves earlier. If you go for the wizard route, then take wizard levels up to at least wizard level 10 and use the extra ability score improvement for a +2 to charisma. For spells, take Counterspell and either protection from energy or Intellect Fortress at level 5. Intellect Fortress is probably the better pick because you already have absorb elements for elemental damage. At level 6, take the spell that you didn't pick, and from then on you can take whichever spells you want. At level 10 wizard we get durable magic, setting our base armor class to 23 and giving us a +2 bonus to all saves while we're concentrating on a spell. We can then either take the final wizard level to get Fizban's Platinum Shield or leave it for later. If you want to go for the Paladin route, then you might want to take wizard level 5 along the way anyway to get access to Counterspell. Countering a fireball will leave you and your party in a much better position than using absorb elements to take half damage or a quarter if you make the save. Take Paladin to level 6 to get Lay on Hands, Divine Smite, extra attack, and most importantly, Aura of Protection. You get Paladin spellcasting and more spell slots as you level too. I'd take healing and support spells with your Paladin slots, but remember that you want to save your spell slots for your defensive shenanigans. While you could use Shield of Faith as your concentration spell, Blur is better. For your Paladin subclass, I couldn't find any that particularly stood out for this build. With my character Thunderstone, I took Oath of the Crown because it fit his personality best. If you find a Paladin subclass that you think fits the build really well, then please let me know in the comments. You get to select a second fighting style as a level 2 Paladin. I'd recommend one of two choices here. If your DM lets you, take Tunnel Fighter from the Unearthed Arcana, Light, Dark, Underdark. If they let you take it, your DM will probably regret it immediately. At the cost of spending your bonus action to enter a defensive stance, this will let you make opportunity attacks with Booming Blade without spending your reaction, and let you make opportunity attacks when an enemy moves within 5 feet of you, even if they don't leave your reach. That'll leave your reaction nicely available to cast Shield, Absorb Elements or Counterspell, or use Arcane Deflection if you need it. If your DM doesn't let you take Tunnel Fighter, then Blessed Warrior is a great pick. You can take the Guidance and Resistance cantrips to make sure you'll always have a spell available for durable magic when you get it, and for some extra help with skill checks and saving throws for you and your party. When you hit level 5 Paladin and get extra attack, you now have an option with your primary attacks. You can either use Booming Blade, which continues to scale nicely as you level up, or make 2 regular attacks to maximise your chances to hit. The best option to pick will depend on the situation. When you've either taken Wizard to level 10 or 11, or Paladin to level 6, take the levels you didn't pick and use the extra ability score improvement to increase your charisma to 20. When you have at least level 10 Wizard and level 6 Paladin, you'll have a base 23 armor class and +7 to all saving throws while you're concentrating on a spell. That's huge. For your final levels, take Wizard level 11 for Fizban's Platinum Shield if you haven't already. Then take Fighter up to 3 to get Action Surge and the Cavalier subclass. This gives you Unwavering Mark, which you can use to protect adjacent allies from adjacent enemies. At this point, if you're adjacent to both an ally and multiple enemies, you may want to make 2 attacks on your turn using extra attack rather than using Booming Blade. This will give you a chance to apply Unwavering Mark to 2 enemies. Congratulations, you're now the tankiest character around. Now let's talk about some of the spells we've chosen and how we might want to use them, and how our build fares up against a worthy opponent, the Adult Red Dragon. I love Booming Blade, and it's bonkers in this build. It lets us make a melee attack and deal extra thunder damage if an enemy decides to move away from us, for example to attack one of our allies. When we get Warcaster at level 5, we can use it in place of an opportunity attack if an enemy decides to run. If we hit, our foe either accepts the thunder damage or cancels their move. Until we get extra attack, Booming Blade gives us a decent damage option and it scales better than most cantrips. At level 5, the main attack that we make deals an extra d8 thunder damage on a hit, and the penalty for the enemy moving increases by d8. Both the main attack damage and penalty damage increase by d8 at levels 11 and 17, making the spell solid at every level. Let's talk Blade Ward. If you didn't take Earth Genasi, it can be good to cast this if you expect to take a huge number of attacks, especially if you have Blur up so there's no need to dodge. It costs your action so you'll miss out on making 1 or 2 attacks, but this build is all about defense anyway. If you took Earth Genasi, then you can use this as a bonus action a few times per day, which is huge, especially considering we don't have many uses for our bonus action. Shield and Absorb Elements are crucial to the build. We don't have a high con, and we're taking a lot of wizard levels with only 5 hit points per level if we're taking the average, so we're relying on not getting hit and mitigating damage rather than soaking it. We might have to choose between leaving our reaction available for shield, absorb elements, counterspell, or arcane deflection, depending on the situation. Blur is amazing when we first pick it up and we only have 21 armor class, and it gets better as our armor class gets higher. The lower the chances an enemy hits you in the first place, the better applying disadvantage is. A crit will always hurt, and there's only a 1 in 400 chance of taking a crit while Blur is up. We all know and love Counterspell, and the best way to mitigate damage is to avoid it entirely. We get up to level 7 spell slots with this build, and unlike most wizards we use spells for defense when they're needed rather than for offense every turn, so we typically end up with a lot of spell slots to spare. Save your high level spell slots to counter nasty spells. When I played Thunderstone at level 20, I countered the big bad evil guy casting Disintegrate at me using a level 7 spell slot. Great waste of your action, Evil Santa. When might we want to use protection from energy? We have Absorb Element, which does a single thing, but that takes a reaction which we could also use to cast Shield, Counterspell, make a Booming Blade opportunity attack, or use Arcane Deflection to pass a failed save. If you're going into a combat and you know there's going to be a lot of elemental damage flying around, then it can be a good option to use for your concentration spell. Intellect Fortress is really great for this build. Wisdom is our weakest saving throw with a +6, and it's a really important one. If an enemy successfully casts Hold Person or Polymorph on us, then all bets are off. This is where Intellect Fortress comes in. It gives us advantage on our Intelligence, Wisdom and Charisma saving throws and resistance to psychic damage. A character with 20 Wisdom and Proficiency in Wisdom saving throws gets a +11 to their saves. We get +6, but we can make it +10 with Arcane Deflection. So when we have Intellect Fortress up and we get advantage on our roll, we have a much better chance of making the save than other characters with high Wisdom saves. Fizban's Platinum Shield is an outstanding spell for this build. It gives you half cover for a +2 to armor class, resistance to elemental damage, and evasion. So let's say you're fighting an adult red dragon and it uses its breath weapon on you. Let's say it got really lucky and rolled the maximum damage on 18d6, 108. By level 18, because of Aura of Protection and Durable Magic, we have a +7 to dex saves while we're concentrating on a spell without magical items. We can also use Arcane Deflection to add 4 to our failed save. That means we can pass a save against the dragon's breath attack with a roll of 10 or higher. Pretty decent odds considering our opponent. Let's say we fail the save. Evasion from Fizban's Platinum Shield reduces the damage by half, and fire resistance from the same spell reduces it by half again for a total of 27 points of fire damage. As we have a +14 bonus to our constitution saves and concentration checks, we don't even need to make a concentration check, and Fizban stays up. While we're at it, let's see how we fare against the dragon's other attacks at level 18. If the challenge rating 17 dragon really doesn't like us, and decides to attack us with all of its multi-attack and legendary action attacks, it can make a total of 6 attacks against us, each with a +14 to hit. While we're concentrating on Fizban's Platinum Shield and we have the +2 to armor class from cover, we have a base armor class of 25 without magical items, and we can raise that to 30 with shield. That means the dragon will need to roll a 16 to hit us, giving it a 25% chance to hit and 5% chance to crit per attack. That means that we'll take on average 1.5 hits per round, and we'll take a crit on average every couple of rounds or so. All of this assumes that we don't have any magical items, but by level 18 we'll probably have at least a +3 bonus to armor class, so good luck, dragon. If a normal hit does go through, the maximum damage is 20 piercing plus 12 fire. As we have Fizzbands up, we halve the fire damage, leaving us with 26 damage on a very lucky damage roll. We don't even have to roll concentration for that, and Fizzbands stays up. If the dragon gets a crit, then the maximum damage is 40 piercing plus 24 fire. With Fizzband's fire resistance, that's 52 damage and a DC 26 concentration check. Without magic items, we have a +14 to our concentration checks. We roll them with advantage, and we can get a +18 with arcane deflection. We have a pretty good chance to make the check, but we could fail it. Of course, if we took Earth Genasi, then we could have used our bonus action on the previous turn to cast Blade Ward, giving us resistance on physical damage too, and ensuring that the worst the dragon can leave us with is merely a flesh wound. I had a lot of fun putting this build together, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Have you come across a build that's tankier than this? If so, let me know in the comments. Until next time, happy adventuring.